What's going on, everybody? Scott Owen coming at you. We're here, we're in the studio. Let's talk about how far should you hit your irons. So if you haven't saw our driver video about how far you should hit your driver, this is something that I think you want to go watch because it's going to talk about, again, some of those key elements such as, impact, ball speed, all of that stuff that are really going to help you here. And again, the point of this video is to kind of educate you on things to look for, on why you might not be hitting the ball as far as you want, or basically I'm trying to answer the question I get all the time on the lesson tee, which is how far should this club go? And the answer really is it depends, but what does it depend on? Let's talk about that right now. All right, so when we start talking about iron play, the biggest thing that we have to look at when we are looking at iron play is, I can't stress this enough because this happens so much when I'm talking with people. People say, oh, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And we'll look at it and we'll say, hey, where are you striking the ball in the face? This has to be rule number one as you are going through. When we are looking at how far should you hit your irons, the number one thing that you have to look at is how much ball speed are you generating? That is the critical thing that we are looking for. You need to be generating a consistent ball speed for that ball to travel a distance. And so that comes straight down to how are we making impact with the golf club. That's why I love an impact location with Flight Scope or any of the launch monitors, because it's so easy to show people this is how things work. This is a shot where I wanted to pull this one up because I see this one a lot where people hit shots and we actually check a lot of boxes as far as how we are launching the ball. This player has some forward shaft lean. They actually have a lot of the conditions to hit a draw, not too much spin, all of that stuff. The launch is decent, but this ball doesn't go nearly as far. This ball actually is going about 13 to 14 yards less than they expect, and it's all because of where we are striking that ball on the face. That's all it is. It's such a massive thing that you have to look at. So number one thing we always will talk about is where are you hitting the ball on the club face? So before we go out and say, all right, you need to work on cleaning up this part of your swing or this part of the swing, we need to clean up our ability or start getting a feel at least. We're not going to hit every single shot dead out of the middle, but we have to have a feel at least to say, all right, did I hit that ball in the center of the face? That is going to be huge. Now, again, this gets a little bit trickier with irons. We don't have necessarily a chart that we would look at and say, hey, this is just optimal for everything, because there are a lot of factors that go into how you hit your irons. When we're hitting driver, essentially, you're hitting your driver, you're just going to try and bomb it as far as you can. So we're just trying to get optimal launches. There are certain things that you are looking for with irons that maybe say, hey, I don't need to hit it as far as possible. I would say for me, definitely, I can hit my irons farther than I typically play them. But the key is not how far do I hit them or how far can I hit them. It's do I know how far I hit it? Because that is how you're going to hit more greens, hit it closer to the hole, all of that stuff. So getting that stuff under control is really our big goal here. And one of the big factors that will also play into this, besides hitting the ball in the center of the face, is going to be what we call dynamic loft. Now, dynamic loft is essentially the loft that you are delivering the club at impact. So when I go to hit a golf shot, I have what's called static loft. My golf club is built with a certain amount of loft. I have a 7-iron here. It has 32 degrees of loft on it, right around there. And when I hit it, I'm not going to bring back 32 degrees of loft, or I shouldn't be, okay? When I hit a shot, for me personally, I like to see 4 or 5 degrees of de-lofting when I go to hit the golf ball. Sometimes you will see certain tour players have upwards of 10 degrees of de-lofting on their irons. They are just trying to hit a shot and they want that club coming back and it actually has some forward lean to it. Couple of reasons we like to do that. One, when you actually de-loft, you're presenting more of the club face to the golf ball, so it's a little easier to hit the ball in the center of the face. But two, I'm able to drive the ball a little bit more, and the lower I launch the ball, usually I'm going to be able to hit the ball a little bit farther because it's just coming out a little bit flatter. Now, That's not true for everybody. Like I said, I like to have about 4 or 5 degrees of loft, of D-loft, because I don't swing it that fast. So for me to hit the ball lower doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to hit it farther, because I'm going to need to have more speed. If I'm hitting it lower, I need more speed to keep it in the air. So it sometimes will fall out of the air. I find that my best numbers come from when I'm up in like that 3-4 degrees of D-loft off of my irons. Okay, so that is one of the things that we will look for as we go through, and that's one of the biggest reasons that people aren't able to hit the ball a distance or a consistent distance, or they even could hit it a lot farther if they get this part dialed in. Now, how could I change the dynamic loft? Well, the best way, this is the way I like to do it, is we need to just work on where is the lowest point of our swing. Our swing is just a big arc, right? If I move the lowest point forward, that arc, I'm going to catch the club. The ball and the club are going to be on the way down, and that means I'm going to be having less loft at the moment of strike. If I have the low point a little bit earlier or more back behind the ball, when I catch the ball, I'm catching it on the way up. This is the big issue that many people have, especially those of you that come in and take a lesson. They say, hey, I need to clear my hips faster. That is not at all what you're going to want to do, because when you clear your hips faster, your low point is typically at your lead shoulder. If I clear, I go up to the top and I just turn, this lead shoulder just spins out behind me. It starts moving backwards. Now my low point is back. I've got to add loft if I have any chance to get to that golf ball. So what I like to see people do, I don't necessarily want you to try to do any holding on to the club. I don't like to do any of that because it has a ton of other issues that go with it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But what I want to see people do is just work on, hey, get this lead shoulder to go more forward. And typically to do that, they feel like they have to shift a little bit more. There's a little bit more feeling of movement in the swing. But you also need to keep this shoulder more closed as you go. You can't let it spin open or that low point is going to move back. So we typically like to see that. I'm going to demonstrate one that's a little bit on the incorrect side. So I just spin, shoulder goes back, contact's on the bottom of the face. You can see actually, this is a great example. I hit that ball almost in the exact same location as the previous shot, but that one went 25 yards shorter, 20 yards short, 30 yards shorter. Good math, Scott. 30 yards shorter because my dynamic loft was 35.5, okay? Low point, not as far, it was actually behind the ball. I'm swinging up on the golf ball, and so I'm just launching this thing into oblivion. I'm at 26 degrees of launch on this club. I should be in the teens or like right around 20 at least with this. It's just going nowhere. I also increased my spin a little bit, even for hitting that bad. That's actually kind of impressive that I did that. The difference would be, let's keep that shoulder in, okay? So we go in, shoulders in, hit the shot, 170 yards. Obviously hit that a lot better. Let's keep that in mind. You will hit the ball better, by the way, doing this. But I feel like I can hit it a little bit more powerfully. I felt like I put the same amount of effort into it. Dynamic loft there, 24 degrees. The launch is at 17. Again, obviously you hit the ball out of the center face. A little bit less spin, which again isn't a bad thing. We're going to talk more about that. But yeah, we're just controlling where we are catching that ball on the arc, so it changes the loft that you are putting into it, has a massive impact on our distance. So the first thing, besides working on hitting in the middle, that I want to see people do is work on getting that loft under control so it's consistent. You don't have to de-loft it as much as I'm doing here or as much as tour players do. But the key is, can you get it to a point where it is fairly consistent? It's not jumping 10 degrees all over the place, even 5 degrees all over the place. We want that ball, what we say is we want that ball launching out of the window fairly consistently. So that is the first way that we do that. Now, the second way that I like to work on getting your distance under control is you got to control the spin on the golf ball. So we just like with the driver, you have to get the spin right as you're hitting golf shots. Now, this gets a little bit different because with the driver, you know, we work on attack angle, all of that stuff. That is very helpful. But with irons, we are going to work on your attack angle, but what I typically like to work on too is you have to work on the type of spin that you are putting on the golf ball, okay? So what do I mean by that? It means, are you putting a right to left spin? Are you putting a left to right spin? Essentially, are you drawing or are you fading the ball? You need to get what we call a stock shot as you are going through. Now, probably pretty common knowledge at this point, but in general, draws are going to go farther and fades will go shorter. If I'm a righty and I'm fading it to the right versus drawing it to the left, typically going to hit the ball a little bit farther with the draw. That is not always the case, especially on tour, but there are some pretty exotic things that are going on for those people that fade it, but still have a lot of distance. Again, there's only a few of those that do that. And, you know, again, they're kind of the outliers, I would say. So for us mere mortals that are working on this, I would say draws are typically going to go farther. That's what I see. Now, why is that? Well, it's going to be a couple of things. One, when we are having a draw type swing, it's going to be a little bit easier to control our low point. So again, if we think about what a draw is as we go, and if you're not familiar with what a draw is, I do have a video. Again, I would check this one out because it's going to show you how to make a draw happen, and you'll see some of the things we're talking about with low point and all that. Check that video out. I'll put it up in the description. Again, I know I'm sending you places, but we're trying to keep it on topic here. So when we go through this and we say, all right, hey, I want to hit a shot and I'm going to draw it, the draw is typically going to come more from the inside, right? Well, when we come more from the inside, what ends up happening is this lead shoulder has to stay more closed. When that lead shoulder stays more closed, it's easier for it to move more out in front. So we typically get much more consistent contact and we get much more consistent delivery of loft into that golf ball. That's one of the biggest things. When people are trying to hit a fade, they have to open it up a little bit more, you know, sooner. It can be a little bit harder to catch the ball exactly where you are on the arc, okay? Again, more for beginners and intermediate players. If you're an advanced player, you certainly could do this, but you have to understand what kind of changes you're going to have to make as you go through to hit the shot. So what I would like to see from players is I like for them to work on that draw path because it makes it a little easier for them to deliver the club with that consistent loft. Now, the other factor that comes into this, when they are hitting from a draw position, that club is going to have a different angle of attack, okay? What ends up happening is when I come more from the inside into the ball, what ends up happening is it's a lot easier to make that angle of attack be a lot more level, I would say. It kind of levels it out and it makes it more consistent, as opposed to people that come more over the top. They're going to hammer down on the golf ball. You're going to hit really down on it, but the low point is off. So then they have to make some sort of adjustment for how they are coming into the golf ball. And so their angle of attack ends up being all over the place. I've been hitting some shots here. Other than a couple of examples, I'm typically around 3 to 4 with my angle of attack on a 7-iron. That's pretty good, hitting down on it. When I have my angle of attack under control, what ends up happening is my spin rate gets under control. Your spin is dictated by what is your dynamic lofted impact and what is your angle of attack as you hit a golf ball. When I'm hitting down and I've got loft that's looking up, this kind of gap in between, so I'm swinging down, club loft is pointing up somewhat, that gap in between is what we call spin loft. Spin loft is essentially just the difference, right? We actually have that number on here, okay, as you're going through. You can see my spin loft is 28.8 degrees. That is, all that is it's essentially my dynamic loft was 24, my angle of attack about -4 down. That's what you get, okay? Do the math, that's the difference. So You need to look at that because if that's jumping all over the place, your spin will be different. So again, I'm gonna do one here where I'm gonna think about my angle of attack down into the ball. I'm gonna try my best to get my loft down, but it's kind of hard to do it, but let's try it here. Okay, not bad. It's hard to get your strike right when you do it, but my spin loft there, okay, 34 degrees, because I hit down on it 7.7, and my loft was 26.8, actually right about the same as the previous shot. That shot only went 138 yards though. Now again, strike, not great, but we saw a strike earlier that went like 152 yards with everything else being in the correct spot, right? So all of these things start to play together and making sure you can control how you're gonna hit it. So well, again, what I like for people to work on is you're working on the loft point with your shoulder, the low point, but then thinking about, okay, how do I come in on a consistent angle into the ball? And typically that is a lot easier to control with that draw swing. So again, for most people, they are gonna feel like they are swinging too much over the top. That's gonna be a big thing. They also feel like they're swinging too down at it, you know, taking massive chunks out of the ground, all that stuff. So what I like for people to do is when they're gonna hit and try to get their loft, their angle of attack under control with some good loft, what we'll do is throw a stick down, could be a club, and all we're gonna do is, when we make some swings, you start to realize where my lead arm is in relation to the stick will play a big part in how that loft is coming down into the ball. So what I try to do is get this consistent. So when I go back, you know, my arm will be about parallel with the stick. As I transition, I try to move it inside the stick so it's swinging out, okay? And if I do that, my angle of attack gets a lot better. That's super exaggerated, but my angle of attack was almost 0 there. And if I put it all together, I'm gonna keep that shoulder in a little bit better here too, so we can get our low point a little more forward. There we go. You can see I even lost my balance a little bit there. Low point, moved it 4 inches forward, 4.4 down. Obviously the strike was better too. I don't feel like I'm hitting it that hard, to be honest with you, but my spin came down 5,000 on that spin. Didn't swing it super fast, 84 miles an hour. Loft again, right in that 26 range, but the angle of attack in that 4 range, which is what I said, that's where I typically like to be. And if I can control that, I have a better idea knowing how far I'm going to hit the golf ball. So just another part that you need to look at is my spin control, which has relationship with your angle of attack and the loft that you are really looking at when you're delivering the club. All right, so one thing I want to talk about as we've gone through, those are those key numbers that you're looking at. So why do I want you to know these things? Why don't you just say, hey, Scott, why don't you just make your swing better? Obviously, as you saw, we're talking about some things that if you just make your swing better, a lot of these things will get better. That is true. But why do I want you to know this? Because when you get on course, this is where it starts to get really, really important to be able to hit more greens. A lot of the mistakes that I see people make when they are hitting golf shots, and because they can't hit greens, is they don't understand the dynamics of a shot, right? So they'll say, hey, I'm gonna hit this ball, I'm gonna do this, and let's say it's uphill or it's into the wind or it's colder, all of these things, they're like, all right, I'm gonna swing harder at it. Well, they swing harder, but they lose control of these dynamics. Well, what ends up happening? They come up short. They think, oh, I took this club and swung harder. It should go farther. I'm going to clear my trouble. Well, it doesn't. They end up in trouble, and usually you're in a bad spot, and so they end up getting really, really big scores. Or a big one that I see is when they're hitting into the wind. They hit into the wind, where hitting into the wind increases your spin, so the ball tends to upshoot. So you need to work on keeping spin off of the golf ball. That is one of the biggest things, hitting into the wind. So, you know, people will take like another club, but they end up swinging hard, or they get up there. What's worse is they take the same club but say, oh, it's into the wind, I'm going to swing harder. they lose these dynamics and the ball comes up 50 yards short. You need to understand how to manipulate these dynamics to be a really good iron player. It's not just about, hey, I'm gonna make a robotic swing and do the same thing all the time. We see this all the time. Even in the modern game, when the wind is starting to get up, we start seeing players start to control these elements to make sure the ball stays under control. So I want you to think about these things as you go. Again, giving you the things that will help control these things. And if you just started building from these elements with your swing, I think you'd be pretty surprised at how good the swing would get as you're going through. So again, if you have questions about it, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Again, not as hard and fast, hey, this is what you got, but some thoughts that I want you to think about as you're hitting your shots and you're trying to get the ball to go certain distances. These are the things I look at, and these are the things pretty much anybody that is a really good iron player looks at. So if you have any questions about it, leave those comments. If you're not a subscriber already and you like what we do here on the channel, again, more here's what is going on and helping you understand what is making things work in our golf swing and in how the golf ball flies. Click that subscribe button. We'd love to have you here on the channel. And as always, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.